Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And we're doing another of our series of discussions with the candidate. And this evening, we're very pleased to have with us Tim Flaherty, coming back for a reprieve.
Yes.
Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gail.
So, what makes you want to run this time?
Well, as I was talking before off camera, we were, Annie and I, my wife, had 3 kids in college, and when they're away at college, I feel like I have a little bit more time on my hands these days. So I felt it was a good time, good opportunity. Jason Silver, actually, when he stepped down, when he made the announcement, he called me up and asked me to think about it, and took me a day, and I called him back and I said, I'm going to do it. So I'm excited about hopefully returning. So
the city's changed a bit since 2009, the last time you were in there. What things do you think you really want to work on?
Well, the things have changed, but some of the issues have not. I think the idea of trying to provide a quality of life and a balance for that, trying to balance development with the quality of life, and trying to have that right mix, which is always a challenge of a city of 40,000. I think those are important issues to work around, and it has an effect on all city budgets. Well, trying to build a new police station, we've been trying to do for many years, but I think we also need to focus on some of the resources and the buildings that we already have, like the fire stations. I know they're doing North Beverly, but for example, like the Central Fire Station, for example, still has single pane windows in it. I think we kind of need to look at some of those things. I know we're doing a lot of big things like the middle school, and that's great, and a lot of road construction, but I think we need to take care of what we have right now.
Yeah, we lost the swimming pool over at Beverly Golf and Tennis a couple of years ago for exactly that reason. It just wasn't maintained, and nobody could come up with. And Beverly Golf and Tennis is a continual maintenance problem.
Right.
So I understand where you're coming from on that, but where are we going to get the money from? With the funding for the bond payments for the middle school?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I know people are talking about the Cumming Center, and that's a strong tax base for the city of Beverly. But we need to kind of balance things out of watching our spending, number one, but also trying different creative ways of how we spend our money. When I was on the council, in 2008, 2009, we consolidated the DPW in the city with the schools to try to run things more efficiently and try to save some money. So I think those are kind of ideas you kind of need to kind of be creative with, and trying to find money and grant money. But again, it's never going to go away. There's always going to be expenses. You just need to take care of what you have.
Well, I was reading in the paper that for the second year in a row, the school committee went to the city council and requested more money. And for the second year in a row, the city council said, okay, we'll give it to you. Now, when they come to the city council with a budget, why is it that they have a budget, the city council, they don't really go over it with a fine-tooth comb, but they accept it. I don't know if they ever reject it. But once you say okay to this budget and you go away, why do they allow them to come back and request more money?
Right. Well, first of all, it's the mayor's school budget, and the mayor proposes the budget.
Right.
It's not the city council budget. The city council role in the whole budget process is to review what the mayor proposes, and he or she can add to that budget, the mayor, before it gets to the city council. Because I know the mayor, the school committee actually was going to request, I think, the last budget season, $600,000, and he said he was going to veto that, and he's going to propose the budget that he proposed. And then the city council, I believe, was going to make some cuts to the city budget and add to the school, and the mayor said that if they do that, he would not, he is authority, he said he would not give that money to the schools. So it kind of is like a cat and mouse game sometimes when you're, and the thing is too, is my feeling, and when you're working with these kind of issues, when you're on a deadline dealing with the budget, you need to have discussions, especially with the school budget being so large, You need to have those discussions in January, even before the mayor proposes the budget, because they don't change that drastically. But I think you need to have discussions of how we can do things differently and creatively and still have a great school system.
Well, I just think that when the school committee comes back and asks for more money, they ought to give reasons and what the money's going to be spent for.
Right.
And I don't think that happened.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I assume they did, but if they didn't, I think the council probably should have requested that they, what were the reasons.
Well, if you got elected to the city council, would you require that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think, and I have a record of doing that when I was on the council before, working with the school committee, working with the superintendent to try to accomplish, to have a great school system. And I think we do. But they're advocating for the school system. And it's a city council's job, responsibility to oversee not only the school budget at the end of the day to approve it, but all city departments. And you have to balance that. That's sometimes a tricky situation.
I think they should keep in mind that it's not their money, it's our money.
Right, right.
And maybe that would make a difference.
But, like anything, they're very passionate about the schools and they're trying to do what's best for the schools. But at the end of the day, you have to, the city council, has to understand that, we're in it for everybody. And I think the schools do understand that, but, they're just advocating for what they think is the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's their main function, is
Right.
support the educational process. You keep coming up to this question of balance. And one of the areas where there's been a lot of buzz in the town is all the building on Rantoul Street, the condos, the issue about affordable housing. I know we've had Andrew DeFrenza on the show talking about we need more, and there are places where there are people on waiting lists that will never get into some of these affordable housing units. And yet, at one time, this was considered to be somewhat of a rural, quiet neighborhood off the end of the tracks. Now it's getting to be an extension of Salem in that it's where the people live to commute to Boston. Where do you come down on the balance point? What's your balance point?
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that word balance, because I think you need to have a balance. This didn't happen overnight when they changed the zoning. I know they had a master plan to try to look at some of those issues for downtown, to try to revitalize Rantoul Street. It's my idea that I think Rantoul Street needed some help. I know that Route 1A project has been in the years, the plans for, 20 years?
Oh, yeah.
And it finally got done. And again, I think you do. I do agree that you need some nice apartments down there to kind of have people, not only people working in Boston, but also seniors, if someone wanted to go back in and to live. I know some people who have lived down there recently and bought some of those apartments. So you do need to have that balance. And the idea is having too much can really kind of have an effect on the community. The only thing is, too, is not only how many they build, it's what they build, too, I think. Because once you build one of those buildings, it's there for forever, right, for the most part? So you want architecturally, you want that to be pleasing, to fit into the character of the downtown. And some people don't understand, too, that there's only that small corridor around that train station area. Rantoul Street itself doesn't have those issues of the height restrictions all up and down Rantoul Street. But I do have some concerns, like, for example, like with the former Friendly's building. From my understanding, and I did sit down with the owners of Beverly Crossing. They're right down at 15 Rantoul Street, and they said anybody's welcome to come down. They have questions, because sometimes people are misinformed. What are the questions? What are the real answers? So I went down and talked to them to get an idea what their plans are. But they're going to push what they think is the right thing for them. They're developers.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's
That's
the
their
nature of the
business,
business, right? It's up to the mayor and the planning board to kind of put their vision in place of what they think is the right thing to do.
What's your vision of Rantoul Street?
Rantoul Street, I think it's a balance of housing and retail. Hopefully, when this is all complete in a few years, you'll look back and have a good tax base. have some retail down there, and have people who do commute on the rail line to be able to have access to walk to the train and have a nice place to live. Again, it's all about the balance, and it's like, what balance are we talking about? And I think we need to kind of strike that tone, because you don't want to overdevelop, because you have to kind of, what resources do you have? Does it have the city resources on water, police, fire? You have to think of all those things.
Well, this goes back to, I guess, when Scanlon was mayor, Bill Scanlon, and he emphasized many times that Beverly is a unique city in that we've got 5 railroad stations. And you hear the magic words of commuter friendly and talking about access to the railroad station. And pretty much Lower Rantoul Street around the station is built out. Maybe they can build a couple more condos where the old shoe, not the sports bar was.
Oh, the
forget the name.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And that should end it. What's your thinking about, do we move to other railroad stations and try to build around them, high-rise commuter type of?
To answer that question is no. I think the appropriate areas where you want to have that area is downtown on Rantoul Street.
Yeah.
North Beverly, Beverly Farms, Montserrat is not the appropriate place to have that. We have a downtown, and that's where, if any of that development should happen, it should go down there. And it's funny you brought up the former mayor. He also said Beverly is a city, and it always has been, but it thinks it acts like a town. And Beverly's that.
You go out to the farms and you know exactly that. Yeah.
Beverly, think about it. When you're coming from Lynn and Salem and different areas, and then you have Beverly, and then the other side of Beverly, you have Manchester, Hamilton, Wenham. There's a big contrast there.
Yeah.
And I think Beverly's kind of that melting pot in the middle, balancing itself between a city and a town.
Yeah, it's the transition region, yeah.
Right. But I also think that makes Beverly special, the diversity that Beverly has between, Pride's Crossing to Gloucester Crossing. I think that, that's its strength. Sometimes it can be its weakness because you're trying to build consensus and there's a lot of different opinions, but that's what makes a healthy community.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on sanctuary cities? We hear a lot about that these days. And we know that Salem has an initiative petition that's going to be on the ballot in November. Beverly schools are sanctuary schools. How do you feel about the city becoming a sanctuary city?
I do not agree with it. I think sanctuary cities are very divisive. I look at the city of Salem next door.
Yeah.
You see the letters in the paper. I've talked to the people, some people who are in Salem on both sides. It's a very divisive issue, which I don't think we need to get into. And I don't think it's the right move for cities to get involved in. I just think it's unnecessary. I think, and I applaud the mayor, what he did a proclamation and talk about the values, the diversity, the strengths we have in this community, and talked in great deal. I think he used the governor's proclamation and used some of the language in there. I think that was the right way to go. That talks about, we already are doing a good job. You don't need an ordinance to say you need to be a sanctuary city. I think the idea of we're a city that's open and ready to communicate with everybody. And I think it has always been the case. We're not always going to agree.
About the police and how it affects them, because I know in a lot of communities, the police have a hard time, especially if they are looking at someone who they suspect has had some difficulties, may have some criminal offenses in their background, and yet they're faced with not being able to hold them for ICE to determine whether or not they are the bad guys.
Right.
I think the idea of it is everybody should be working to keep the people in the city safe.
Right.
I think that's where the confusion comes in when they throw out the word sanctuary city and being welcoming. They had a very nice presentation at the senior center a couple of months ago, and the chief of police said very explicitly, if somebody comes into the city and comes to their attention, and the example he used was somebody walking out from behind a closed store at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're going to get stopped and questioned, and if everything checks out, they're going to be sent on their way. But if they come up with a warrant or obvious criminal activity, they're going to take them down to the station and continue the checkout, and if necessary, hold them for the appropriate authorities. And it comes down to a sanctuary city cannot work where you think that being an illegal immigrant is a get-out-of-free jail card. It doesn't work that way, and I think that it's misinforming people when they sort of imply that.
I'm not really sure what the goal of a sanctuary city. I think the idea is we are welcoming, and I think the job of a police officer or a teacher in the school system, they're there to educate. Police officers are here to keep the streets safe, and I think people need to understand that whether they're a legal immigrant or undocumented, you need to, doesn't make a difference. It could be a Beverly citizen that's causing problems. It doesn't make a difference. We're here to kind of protect every single citizen, and we're also here on the school to educate students as well.
Getting back to schools, the vocational school. What do we do with the students? Because we have a limited number of students that can go to the vocational school. Each city has a limited number. What do we do with the students that are on the waiting list and would like to go? They're not happy or they're not doing well in a traditional school setting. They want the vocational education. What do we do?
That's a great question, because there were, and I talked to the superintendent, Lupini, over at North Shore Tech, about that same question back in June, I think. And the idea of, there are a lot of people on that waiting list. 20, 25 years ago, or even longer probably, when they used to be over here at the old United Shoe, there wasn't a lot of demand. It's kind of shifted, and of course we got rid of a lot of schools like Beverly, got rid of the vocational schools, and unfortunately now all the money is going over to North Shore Technical School, and now people are trying to get there because we don't have the resources at the schools, at the public schools, not only in Beverly but other surrounding communities, to take care of the kids that want to be part of that. So that's a great question, and I don't have an exact answer for you, because I know a lot of those kids who were on the waiting list who are freshmen now that wanted to go there still might want to go there. So the experience of them being a Beverly High School freshman, for example, might not be a great way. They may learn to love Beverly High School, and they can kind of adapt and kind of work with some programs, because Beverly does have some educational programs, vocational small type programs, but obviously not what they have at the vocational school.
Well, they can't have programs, from what I understand, they can't have programs that will compete with what the vocational school offers.
That's a good question too, because when I was on the city council before, I always had concerns, because when we always kind of look at the Beverly school budget, and we look it over and we say, sorry, you're not getting that money, or you're going to work with it's looked over very carefully, right? Especially the school committee, and we go up or down. With the vocational school, there's almost like they're telling us what our budgets could be because they get so much money per student that goes there, correct?
Right. Yeah.
And it's almost like where's our? I know we have a representative on there, but it's almost like they're telling us what the budget's going to be, and there's no check. I don't think there's checks and balances are as could be worked on a little bit, because we look at our own school budget and we cut, but we don't do that to the vocational school, technical school.
Have you ever talked to the representative to the vocational school?
I haven't lately, but I did talk to the person who was on there.
Okay.
And again, they're one person on there too, and they're advocating for the technical school. And again, it's a fantastic school.
Oh, yeah.
The state should work on ways to be able to fund that, and to work with them to kind of not have a waiting list.
Well, the reason I asked you that, I was kind of laughing when I said it, because I remember a couple of years ago, I tried to get in touch with him. Email, phone calls, nothing.
With the representative?
So I believe he's appointed, is he not?
Yes.
Yes.
By the mayor.
Okay.
Yep. So again, that's something we could look into.
Yeah.
When we're on the city council.
I think it would be good to have him come and discuss
Right.
the budget
Right.
and what's going on at the vocational
Right.
school as far as
and not only
Beverly's
that, but I
concerned.
think even the superintendent, I'm sure, would come over and do that as well. They do a great job over there, and I just wish we could, those kids on the waiting list. I think there was 300 kids on the waiting list,
wow.
and
That
so
many?
it's unfortunate,
lot.
and those 300 kids can get an education here, but
Yeah.
it's not what they're looking for. So I think those kids are missing out.
Are they, somebody told me that these kids are eligible to apply at different vocational schools, for instance, the Northeast in Wakefield. Is that true for Beverly? Because I'm pretty sure in Peabody it is.
It might be Peabody, but I don't think so in Beverly because
No.
when the North Shore, they have their own district from Salem to up to Gloucester,
Right.
and west, and it's like a regional
It's
district.
gotten to be a fundamental problem. No matter what you build for a technical school, it's going to be in more demand than they can handle.
Right.
It's the same problem all over.
Well,
And it's getting to the point where even the regional colleges, community colleges, are starting to put in more technical kinds of programs geared towards what the certificate in advanced manufacturing is one of the programs they have. So you can see the demand around. So it really comes back to, if we've got a demand in the city for that kind of service, that kind of education, then we've got to do something ourselves about it. And
But the good
depending
question you asked
upon
me
the-
earlier, how do you fund it?
yeah, well, the issue is, where is your emphasis on the funding you're spending?
Right.
If we're sending money to North Shore Tech to have students
Right.
treated there, what could we do with that money if we kept it in-house?
Right.
What could we change in our program to put more emphasis? Obviously, within this building we're in, we're not going to convert it into another patent trade school.
Right.
But at the same time, BevCam does a marvelous job educating students on how this system works.
Right.
Now, this may not be the opportunity every kid is looking for, but more emphasis on programs like this, where more hands-on kind of stuff, I think, is an emphasis I think the City Council might mention a few words to the school committee, that you ought to be changing your priorities a bit.
And not everybody is going to go to college. Not everybody should go to college. It's expensive. Some kids get there and they have no clue what they want.
Right.
Give them a year or two off.
Right.
Go to work.
Right.
And if you have a skill, maybe you'll make a business out of it.
Yeah.
Promote
I think it's one of the
entrepreneurship.
big issues in the city of Beverly.
Yeah.
I think it's a statewide issue of trying to figure out.
Yeah.
There's 300 kids, for example, on the waiting list that need to be,
That's a lot of
and
kids.
the Beverly High School tries to work with them. A lot of good students coming here, but their desire is to be at North Shore Technical School.
Those
They want
4
to be there.
years go
We
by
can't do
very
that.
fast.
Well, that's the
do.
image that they portray. The only place you can get a technical education is go to North Shore Tech.
Yeah.
Right.
Got to change that.
Yeah.
But anyway, get back on the balance issue again. The city has done a pretty good job cleaning up Rantoul Street with the new highway and all the fancy lighting fixtures and the
Right.
trees that are going to get planted. What do you think we ought to do about Cabot Street?
Right. Well, I do know, and talking to some of the city councilors, that they're, have some state money. They were talking about maybe doing Bridge Street at one point. I think we need to kind of refocus and do something with Cabot Street. But the other thing we can't forget too, because sometimes you look at the big things, and sometimes it's the devil in the details. Like you look down, even the new sidewalks on Cabot Street and different things. I think the DPW does a great job. But they do, how much money do they have to work
Yeah.
with to try to be proactive and do the right things? But you do go by some of the trees in there, and they're not really well landscaped. They have weeds growing out of them and different things. We've got to figure out a way to not blame the DPW kind of thing, because they do a great job, but maybe figure out something that we can find ways to kind of make sure that weeds don't grow up. You have beautiful sidewalks, beautiful streets, and then you have these weeds that are coming out of the sidewalk. So I think we need to improve it, but we also need to have a plan for a long-term improvement.
There's an old joke about the potholes in the highways won't get fixed until it becomes a photo op for the local politicians. And I think the weeds are in the same category. That, yeah, Rantoul Street gets a lot of attention now, and so does Gloucester Crossing. The new
Right.
lights, new fixtures, new everything down there. And it gets a lot of very positive press.
Right.
And got to get to the point, I think, of, yeah, the weeds got clipped this week, and that's important, and we're happy about it.
Right.
And
But
we notice it.
But I think you need other cities and towns, they work with their Main Street. I mean, Beverly has a Main Streets program. They do a great job with that. But there are other cities and towns that the downtown businesses get involved, the community gets involved, and to try to maintain that. Some communities have, hanging flower planters that kind of brighten the community, and that's that sense of relying on the DPW, or they call it DPS now. But you can find creative ways to kind of to beautify the downtown. It's not all about bricks and mortar.
Well, you see at every intersection, there's a little sign in this intersection that this intersection is taken care of by such and such a company.
Yep.
And
Well,
I
we
think
are the Garden City, after all.
Right. Well, that's an important part. I'm glad you
we should
mentioned
remain that.
The idea of the developer, they already have 2 or 3 sites that they're ready to build. That's what that's already been in the plans.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of when they had that green space down in front of the MBTA garage, people didn't know that another building was going to go up there, and that wasn't Beverly Crossing. People get confused. They call it Windover.
Barnett, yeah.
It's Beverly Crossing. But then that other company,
Barnett.
went up there, and now they're building a high rise. And people are like, oh, the green space. I think we kind of have to come back and look at the green space, whether it's bushes, trees, gardens or something to that effect, to soften the approach of downtown. I understand they're going to be building, but those buildings are going to be there for years to come. You want to be able to have some, again, the balance of having not a concrete jungle.
Right. And on that note, we're going to have to end our show.
Okay.
We've enjoyed having you here.
Thank you.
We wish you lots of luck in your campaign.
Thank you.
And would you like to say 30 seconds?
30
if you
seconds?
want to say,
Well, thank
give a
you. I
recap.
appreciate you having me on the show. I'm excited to hopefully have the opportunity to serve the city of Beverly. I did it for 12 years, 2 years as council president. I think I'm a consensus builder. I like to work with people, and I think I've had proven results with the schools, with the city in years past when I was on the council. So hopefully I'll have that opportunity with my experience. I think it can help the city council and the city to prosper for years to come. Thank
Very
you for
good.
having me. Appreciate
Very
it.
good. Good luck.
Thank you.
And with that, we will end our show. We thank you for watching, and we hope you'll continue to watch as we interview more candidates for public office in Beverly. Thank you, and good night.